Hey guys, I'm back out in my yard, which is what I was thinking would be nice. It's, as you can hear, also fairly windy out here. I had a nightmare at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't know whether that's also your sort of a slot of time where the kind of thing comes to you, but it was an interesting kind of a dream, put it that way. And it was about people I used to work with or for, and it was just illuminating to me. And since then, I've had a bit of breakfast, then gone back to bed because 5 o'clock in the morning is not a useful time for me to be doing anything. However, I also pulled a few cards because it all ties in with my revelations, I should say, around the theme of human integrity. Whether we actually have any, whether that's a thing that exists or maybe just an idea, that we are flinging into each other's faces to get back at people, or because there's actually something to that, actually something that you could feel comfortable with in yourself and that you could feel sure about. Those are really interesting notions to me personally. So I'm also in my yard because you can see all the sun here that didn't used to be there, because that's where the maple tree used to be. So this whole area, I have filmed here occasionally. Can you see my face? I'm talking to the machine here. It has a bit of a hard time with all the contrast, If I go like this, it doesn't make any difference. It's just that the darker side, filming in the outdoors, I was running around for 20 minutes trying to set this up in a way that it actually looks more or less pleasing, to me at least, in parentheses. The maple tree, the things that have been going on, lots of which I have documented in my vlogs over the past summer. I've also done quite a bit of writing, to which I will be returning as the season progresses and so on and so forth. I have found that I've learned one particularly crucial thing. I'm hoping my camera won't blow away with the wind. Don't think so, but just being sure here. One thing I've learned is that if you're a kid, and I think this happens way more often than I was assuming, only I experienced it very deeply and for a very, very long time. And I have been wrestling with this for a very long time because I didn't accept it. The thing is that if you question the human integrity, whatever that means, right, of a kid, like before they're 6 years old, how are they going to manage that? And I think this happens, like I said, I think this happens a lot. Maybe it also happens especially for women, for girls, depending on the circumstances and depending on the family that she is from and the history of what they used to do around these ideas. I figured out very slowly, and basically also thinking about things I was putting in an email to a relative of mine, and who isn't really directly, he's connected, but he's not like completely inside the same emotional scheme of pressures and expectations and things, not in the same way that I was. Also, he's not a woman. Actually, gradually it came to me that this was basically what had been so difficult for me it is the golden key to my troubles with my mother, and therefore with myself, where I have a history of sudden, sort of cramp-like frustrations in a relationship with people who are expecting something of me, often where I do not know exactly what it is that they're expecting. I have done the sharing about this before, if you're new here, welcome. And this is what I do. I've gone into this kind of stuff. If you do not know what it is that's expected of you, it is nigh on impossible, especially if they are putting such pressure on you. This is my pattern. I get such pressure that I am blocked from figuring out what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. I do not get the chance to upfront, do anything right, ever. This is such a, it's like a permanent catch-22 type situation. You can't do anything right ever, fundamentally. That's basically the idea. And I noticed what one thing and another, and interactions between people, and how I reacted to that, and how it felt, and that actually I was so much stronger, but I still wasn't able. And this I have also said earlier. I remember now, saying similar things a number of times, that I have gained so much strength, I have gained so much understanding, I have gained beauty, in all sorts of ways. I mean, inner beauty, this is the face of a 54-year-old who's been through the mill, so never mind that. I put face cream on though, just because I was getting a bit dry around the edges. You're never really free. I do Kundalini yoga often, like 5 times a week or so. It helps. It makes me feel so much more alive. It changes my connections to the world around me. It makes me feel like a human being, and like a person full of possibilities, and full of life and energy and love even, wow. I mean, that used to be completely impossible. And still, you're not completely safe from that type of anxiety. The anxiety that has been programmed into my very marrow by people distrusting me, actually determining for me that I wasn't to be trusted. And it took me an age and a half, actually half a century, to figure out that that was one thing that my mother let loose on me, because for her it was still, a lot of it was still sort of subconscious. My mother passed away 25 years ago, so she has not had to, give any more input about this. She used to resent the whole issue. I have occasionally tried to sort of call her out on some things, and she would just get mad, because it was impossible for her to deal with any of those things. And she's not here anymore now. And I am sure, and I regret it very much, but I would not have been able to do my stretch of work if she'd been still around. So that's lame. It's very lame, and you can't share the goodness, because there was a lot of goodness as well, also in her personally. But it was a subconscious part of her that actually recreated this scenario of distrust, and of assuming, there's the thing right there, assuming that me in this case, but she was like that towards everybody else, and towards herself as well. That whatever you do, you have hidden motives. There is always meanness inside you. You are fallible and imperfect, and all sorts of criticisms, that she also definitely applied to herself as well. So this, I realized that she actually sort of regurgitated this whole thing, because she learned it that way. She learned life that way from her own mother. And her own mother is someone I hadn't known, because she passed away before I was born. And so it was really hard for me to put one and one together. It is also, to me, it seems that I don't do this. I don't myself judge people this way. I wouldn't know why or how, because to me, naturally, personal integrity is something you always have. Everyone has it, and there's not a, you can't not have integrity, or at least the wish for it, or at least the desire to do whatever is right. And sometimes people deviate from that endlessly, you know, and hurt themselves and hurt other people. But there are causes for that, and it's all, you know, there's a pattern to all that. And so I figured out this pattern, what with a little help from astrology about my grandmother, and a little help from remembering actually bits and things that my mum told me about her, just little bits, enough, you know, to suddenly everything just fell into place. It was quite striking. It was an interesting time. This happened about 2 weeks ago or so, that I was actually, over the course of a day and a half or so, I was sort of suddenly, you know, just seeing it from just a slightly different angle. And all of a sudden, finally, there's the thing. It links it all up to them, and it links it all up to me and the way I felt and the way I've, you know, had a really hard time coping with things, because I don't do well if you distrust me fundamentally. It's something I've actually known for a very long time, that I want people to just feel not threatened by me. So there's another little element in this whole tale, right? People take away the notion that you should be, that you are trustworthy and have value, have worth, all those things. Because it is a very common, I think, strategy for them to defend themselves in situations where they are completely overwhelmed. And you, as the recipient of all this, do not often or not always get to see the whole story of how overwhelmed they are. I know my grandmother was completely overwhelmed from the time she married my grandfather, and then afterwards moved to Indonesia. I do not know for sure whether he actually came back to get her, or whether she traveled there by herself. Either practice was fairly normal. This is in around the 30s, 1930s, that this happened. I do know one story that my grandfather told us, fairly, you know, it wasn't a secret, you know, it wasn't like a hush-hush kind of a story. He told me that she had a really hard time adapting, my grandmother that is, to the heat, the tropical heat in Indonesia when once she got there. And she was lying on the bed suffering from the heat because she couldn't sweat. She wasn't perspiring, she wasn't sweating. And it was like 40 degrees or 35 degrees or something crazy like that in the evening, late in the evening. And she was either crying or close to crying, because for hours this had I don't know what kind of toxins went around her brain at that time, but it was a very, very bad time. And my granddad said, which is a very rare occurrence for him to, you know, state things like that, that he was like at his wit's end to help her. He wanted to really to help her and you know, give her something to alleviate her distress. And he had a brainwave, and he took out a large bottle of cologne and sprinkled the whole of the bottle over her body, her naked, I suppose, body lying on the bed like that. And apparently that relaxed her enough. However this is supposed to be working, I have no idea. It's just a weird story to me, because I can, you know, perspire just fine. Don't worry about that. But she broke into a sweat as a consequence of the shock to her skin. Somehow she relaxed enough to pew, you know, all of a sudden. And after that, he said that it had never been a problem anymore. But that's just one of those things that I have remembered from, like, dug up from ages ago, like him telling me this is at least 30 years ago, I think. And still it's in here, you know. and it fills in a little detail about this woman that I have never known, but who grew up in a very controlled, very well organized, domestic, safe, predictable kind of an environment, who was then carted off to Indonesia, to a tropical country, where she tried to, have a domestic and controlled and well organized household and safe for people, etc. But it didn't really, it didn't last very long. Also, I don't think she trusted her daughter ever at all. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, because there's people alive who knew her and who knew my mother as well. So there's more less pleasant, details about this. And I'm just here in 2020 right now, trying to explain for myself why it is that I have such strong emotional reactions sometimes to specific people. And I believe there's astrology hiding at the bottom of that as well, because that tends to be the case, where planets can, in a birth horoscope, can actually trigger, remind you of patterns and things. So I was pulling cards, and I had actually let them out nice on my great big huge cloth that I tend to use for pretty card drawers, certainly in the outside, but it's not going to work because of the wind. So sorry, I will just show them in my hands to you like this, if I get them back in order again. I have actually done 3 draws here, and I was drawing cards because I felt like, okay, so what are the cards going to tell me if I ask what is integrity, right? And I started off with my new Thoth deck. I went on to the Halloween tarot with all the pumpkins and all that stuff, and I finished up with the Marseille. So I did 3 actual draws. Not what I tend to do normally is pull cards from my little Marseille deck. That's one of the cards right there. And then look for the illustrations for the same card. So say I have a Page of Pentacles right here. That's him. I would normally look up the Page of Pentacles in the Thoth deck, or in the Halloween, or in the Marielle, or in any other deck that I feel like using at the moment. The first set that I got are these, the Thoth cards. I get an 8 of Swords. What is integrity? And it is just 3 cards each, and it is the 8 of Swords, the 10 of Pent, and the Devil, believe it or not. So I went like, okay, wow, those are rather different cards from what I was expecting. I was expecting, personal integrity to be about the sun and the star, or potentially Judgment, or the Chariot, or one of those things, and then a couple of Wands cards, or Cups cards, or something. I don't. I get the 9 of Swords, the 8 of Swords, not the 9, the 8 of Swords, the 10 of Pent, and the Devil. So, okay, over to the next one. The Halloween tarot, for the same type of an intention, gives me Temperance. There she is. The Hanged Man, like so. And the Devil again. So I went like, wow, that's striking, having the Devil twice actually. And it's rather different devil, but it's still, the familiar type of imagery. Gonna pick up that card because I dropped the Hanged Man here. I don't want them to be lying in the dirt. So 3rd time pays for all. I go to the Marseille. I'll put those back in here. And I get the Page of Pentacles, the King of Cups, the 10 of Pentacles. So you can make of this, if you're watching this, you know what these cards mean, or at least what they mean to you. I was struck by the recurring cards, the Devil card coming up twice and the Ten of Pentacles coming up twice. And it feels to me like the Devil is crucial. The doubt and the fear and the enslavement and the limitations and the suffering from limitations. It is crucial because integrity is a process. Integrity isn't a thing. It's not something that is just sitting here like my phone or like your phone or like it's not a fixed object. And I hear my mom protesting from out there because it's she was very motivated to I was watching Jennifer's making has made 4 videos for me about art from the Art History Tarot for past lives, going to my past life connection with my mother in 2 videos, and then 2 other ones that she will upload in the near future. Today's Thursday, the 24th, I think, of September 2020. And I was watching that, and I was struck again by how my mother had really high principles. She had like, yay, this is the ceiling here. Her principles were way over there. Unreachable to me most of the time, because of this whole thing that you have to try to achieve something that isn't really within your scope at all, or you waste your life often. I have wasted decades trying to live by other people's principles, and that's what my dream was about this morning. How I can see a lot better now through my dreams also. Getting this type of reaction from people where people are trying to control me, people are presenting for the good of whatever it is that they think they're doing. They're not putting any trust in me because they can't. And that makes this whole integrity stuff so difficult to deal with, and so that we don't know what we're doing, really. Not as a group, not as humanity, all of us, And it makes it, if you put one person, just in the other chair here and give him a cup of coffee, if that's what he wants, and let him chill for a bit, you'll find out that most times there's plenty of goodness inside, in all of them. Give him time, give him space. What are their needs in order to not be, clawing at the world? Most times what we spend our lives doing is clawing at each other. I hate that. It makes me really uncomfortable. I think it's a bloody waste of energy and a bloody waste of... We're doing the wrong thing when we're doing that. We're not figuring anything new out. My mother never figured anything new out for herself. She wanted me to think about these things, so yay for that. And because she succeeded in that, also with all the pressure, I went ahead and did, as close to that as I could get. But it was really difficult and really painful, and I don't think I'll ever be completely free of all the triggers and all the stuff, because that's the devil, right? The devil's work is to make you uncomfortable for as long as possible. And you don't really get out of it. You change and transform things for yourself. Eventually, if you're lucky, if you keep at it, and you may, get lots of chances to tweak things a bit by the time you're this age, freer and more. I don't need to be with people who force me, that was a French word right there, who make me be, obedient and exist only within the specs that they are giving out. It's sick, but it happens every day, all the time. So here's to freedom. I'm going back inside to get me a sweater because it's actually rather nice out here. It is a lot cooler, and there has been quite a bit of rain during the night. Not tons of rain, but quite a bit. garden looks and feels a bit more alive already. It's been really dry. And this afternoon I will be going off to the local history society again. Eek. And, the other video, one of the set of 4 videos is about, that Jennifer made, Jennifer Pearson, is about the local history society and why I'm so fond of that place and stuff. And she came to the conclusion, what with her cards and all, that I have a past life history with the Library of Alexandria. Why not? It's interesting and neat because it would explain, to the extent that there's actually any explaining happening here, it would explain I have a fascination with Kabbalah and Kabbalah texts and old manuscripts. Lots of that. All my life, way before I knew anything about this, my fascination with tarot is a part of this whole scheme and deal. Astrology is part of the same scheme and deal. There's a couple of things there that I think, even if it wasn't maybe necessarily Alexandria, there was a similar type of there was such a place. And it was not, I think, a Christian, like a monastery library or that sort of a place. It wasn't a Christian context. And so, so a classical or like, before Christ type of context is actually, to me, feels more likely. I'm a nut about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and Mary Magdalene is a figure of interest to me. But I'm always looking at things from a bit of a distance and trying to compare notes from different areas of science or different investigations, and then sort of dovetailing them together and stuff like that. That's just my MO. And I noticed, or I realized as a result of those videos, one little aspect that I that really made a quarter drop in my brain was that I like this local history society. I'm actually pointing over there because that's where they are. Because even though half of what they got lying there is about how to live a proper Catholic woman's life, in the 50s and 40s, not so much, or similar type of social sorts of context that I have absolutely no personal connection to. There's lots of other stuff as well, and lots of very local, archaeology digs. There's mostly books. It's all books, basically. I actually found a number of, what was it, three I think, little booklets of about 20 pages each that dated from the early 17th century, like a woodblock printing or some sort of a printing like that, in Latin. And the guy at the shop, at the society, he scanned the whole thing for me so that I could have a proper look at it on the computer at home, and we stored them in a separate archive. But they were just in the bookcase, sort of stuck, squeezed in between lots of other heavier, tougher volumes, and they were still there, and the paper quality was apparently that good back in those days that they survived 1608, I think it was, 1708, so 1708, 1808, 1908, 2008, 400 years. Not in that bookcase. They've been in all sorts of places in the meantime. Which kind of a neat thought. In Latin. And, it's things like that. And the rest, there's loads of very bland, recent stuff that's to do about how decisions are made for what the place is going to look like, and streets that are being changed, or buildings that are taken down, or new building sites, permits and stuff like that. There's lots of that, but it's not a government or a commune, what you call that, type office. It's not an office at all. It's just where everything gets stashed that has some type of historical value to people now, which is something that I see apparently in a rather different or wider context and scope than a lot of the people who who sits around there. Okay, that was half an hour, I think, almost. Thank you so much for watching, for joining me here, and ponder the devil card and his connection to integrity in your life, if you like. If not, go do something nice, okay? Thank you for watching. See you next time. Ciao.